Ever bite into a persimmon and expect, like, apple-like sweetness, only to have your mouth suddenly feel like it's full of cotton?
That's the persimmon for you, the astringent kind, at least. But you know what most people don't realize is that there's this whole world of persimmons out there. We're talking different flavors, global traditions, even some, dare I say, surprising science.
And all that's coming from just one Wikipedia article, which is our source material today. But it's a good one. Definitely enough to keep us busy during this deep dive.
It really shows you how much history and variety can be packed into something we see at the grocery store, you know? We just think fruit, but there's more to it.
So true. Okay, so for anyone who hasn't had what we'll call the pleasure, what exactly is a persimmon?
Well, if we're getting technical, it's the edible fruit from certain trees, the Diospyros genus. Fun fact, they're related to ebony trees, you know, that dark wood used in like fancy furniture. Persimmons come from a pretty elegant family.
Okay, that's a good one. I'm going to remember that. But back to the fruit itself. The Wikipedia article was saying how they're not actually berries, like in the culinary sense, even though technically they are.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like how we categorize things every day doesn't always match up with the science. When we hear berry, we think small, soft. But persimmons, they develop from a single ovary, just like blueberries or even, believe it or not, tomatoes.
Today I learned. And it's a global fruit. The article said it started in China but spread across Asia and everywhere, really. Makes you wonder how something from one part of the world becomes such a big deal in others.
Right. It's like the power of trade, cultures mixing, and honestly, a delicious fruit making its way into new traditions. And speaking of diversity, there are way more types of persimmons than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like what we see in stores is just the tip of the iceberg. The article talked about a whole family tree of persimmons. What's up with that?
Oh, yeah, so many. But the most popular one is the Kakegi persimmon Diospyros kaki. It's basically the king of persimmons, and that's mostly because of all the different varieties within it. And this is where it gets interesting. You've got your astringent versus non-astringent types.
Okay, back to astringent. For anyone who, let's say, hasn't had the most pleasant experience, what does that mean?
So it all comes down to tannins. They're natural compounds in plants, and astringent persimmons have tons of them when they're not ripe yet. That's where that dry, puckering feeling comes from. But, and this is cool, as they ripen, those tannins break down and the fruit becomes, well, delicious.
So they're like the Cinderella of fruit.
Yeah.
From astringent to amazing?
Yeah,
What about non-astringent? Safe to assume those are good to go right away.
pretty much. They've got lower tannins to begin with, so you can enjoy them with a good crunch, similar to an apple. But they also get softer and sweeter as they ripen, so it's really just about what you prefer.
This deep dive is already changing how I think about persimmons. I mean, all these varieties just within the kaki type, hachia, fuyu. There's even a chocolate persimmon.
And each one has a different flavor, shape, even uses in different cuisines. That's what I love about this kind of stuff. You think it's simple, but then there's this whole world to uncover.
So many varieties. It's amazing. But are there, like, actual health benefits to these different types?
Yeah.
Beyond just being yummy, of course.
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Persimmons in general are good for fiber, but they've also got these things called phytochemicals that have got scientists really curious.
Phytochemicals, huh? Sounds like something out of a lab. Break it down for us.
Think of them like natural compounds in plants. They're often why fruits and veggies have their bright colors and, well, unique flavors, but they're also part of a plant's defense system, and some of them might have benefits for us, too.
So when we hear about the good stuff in fruits and veggies, phytochemicals are part of that.
Exactly. With persimmons, you've got things like, let's see, catechins, gallocatechins, oh, and betulinic acid. Studies have shown some potential with those for antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, but, and this is important, we need more research. Always good to, chat with a doctor before making decisions based on potential health stuff.
Right, for sure. But still, I like the idea that something so tasty could have extra benefits. Bonus.
Mm.
Speaking of cool processes, let's go back to those tannins. You said they break down when astringent persimmons get ripe. How does that work?
So traditionally, people would ripen them faster by storing them with, say, apples or bananas. Turns out there's a reason for that.
I'm all ears.
Those other fruits give off ethylene gas, which helps things ripen. It starts a process in the persimmons that breaks down the tannin, changes the texture, the flavor. It's pretty cool how people, figured that out even before the science.
Like we were hacking nature without even knowing it.
Right.
Love it. But persimmons aren't just for, eating plain. The article mentioned how they're used around the world. Some of those cultural uses were fascinating.
Yeah.
What are some of the more, I guess, unique ways people use them in their cuisines?
Oh, you see everything. Desserts, drinks, even some savory stuff. In Korea, they've got this spicy punch called sujangwa. It uses dried persimmons, gives it a sweet but tangy thing. They traditionally drink it after a meal to, like, cleanse the palate or as a digestive aid.
A persimmon punch.
Yeah.
Digestive aid, you say? Might need to try that after my next big meal.
Definitely recommend it. And if you're feeling adventurous, there's a gamsipcho. It's a Korean vinegar, but it's made from fermented persimmons. It's got this tartness they use in different dishes.
Persimmon vinegar.
Mhm.
Yeah, now that's not something you see every day. It just shows you how one fruit can be like interpreted in completely different ways depending on where you are. Any other examples that stuck with you?
Oh, for sure. In Taiwan, they have this thing where they preserve astringent persimmons in lime water. It mellows them out, and they call it crisp persimmon. It's got this really unique, almost like gelatinous texture.
Crisp persimmon. That's like an oxymoron, right? I'm into it. The creativity is amazing. What about like other parts of the persimmon, leaves or anything? Do those get used?
That's what I find so cool about this. You explore one ingredient, and it opens up all these doors. In Japan, they actually make tea from dried persimmon leaves, kaki no hacha. It's got this mild, slightly sweet flavor. Some people think it's good for you, but again, we need more research on that.
Persimmon leaf tea. This fruit can do it all, I guess. Before we go too far down the health rabbit hole, though, what about the folklore? The article mentioned some interesting stuff about that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think those stories tell us a lot about how cultures see nature. For example, in the Ozarks, there's this belief that you can tell how bad the winter will be by cutting open a persimmon seed.
Okay, persimmon seed weather forecasting. You got to tell me more.
So they say the shape inside the seed can tell you about the winter. A spoon shape. Get ready for snow. Fork means mild winter. And if it looks like a knife, watch out, it's going to be a rough one.
I love it. Just goes to show you how people figured things out, before we had all this technology.
Totally. Might not be scientifically accurate, but it tells you something about how we try to make sense of the world. And who knows, maybe there's some truth in there somewhere from watching the same patterns over years and years.
That's true. But didn't the article say this was, like, debunked?
Mm.
What's the official word on persimmon seed weather?
Yeah, so the Missouri Department of Conservation, they chimed in. Turns out the shape is more about the type of persimmon and how it grew that year, not predicting the weather.
Guess I shouldn't cancel my weather app subscription just yet. Still a fun bit of folklore, though. Any other, like, persimmon beliefs that stuck out?
Oh, there was one from Korea I thought was interesting. They think dried persimmon's got gum can keep tigers away.
Wait, hold on. Dried persimmons repel tigers. Okay, now I've heard it all. Is there any truth to that, or is that, like, a purely cultural thing?
Probably more symbolic than anything else, like a lot of folk traditions. Interesting to think about how these beliefs come about, maybe as a way to explain things they didn't understand or to teach people to respect nature.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Every culture has its own stories like that.
Mm.
That's part of what makes these deep dives so fun. But back to the fruit itself, the article mentions some of the nutrients in persimmons. Anything stand out to you?
Well, good source of fiber, always a plus. But they're also pretty high in manganese.
Manganese. That one doesn't get enough credit, does it? Why do we need it?
Right. It's a trace mineral, so we only need a little. But it's involved in a lot. Bones, metabolism, even protecting cells. And persimmons are a great way to get it.
Persimmon power. It's funny how a deep dive like this can totally change how you see something. We're talking history, traditions, folklore, even a little nutrition, all from one fruit.
Right. It shows you how food and culture and nature are all connected. We think of a fruit as just one thing, but there's this whole world behind it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So for anyone listening who's thinking, I need to try some persimmons now, what's the main takeaway here? What should they remember?
Be curious. Even about something familiar, you never know what you'll learn. Cool facts, history, new ways to use it.
So true. This has been awesome. I'm looking at persimmons in a whole new light. Who knew there was so much to them?
That's the power of a good deep dive.